We are in the CEC office in Warsaw after a very exciting election night and an even more exciting post-election morning. Here with Marek Matraszek, CEC's chairman. Marek, first of all, was this result, the victory of law and justice in the European Parliament elections, surprising for you?
Well, I think it's once again a lesson that one should never underestimate the ability of the centre-right to win in Poland. The second lesson is never trust the exit polls, because once again we've seen an election on the morning when the votes have been counting showing a much greater victory for law and justice than the exit polls had suggested. And it is true, most pundits, and in fact I would assume most politicians, weren't expecting this victory to be as great as it has been for law and justice.
And that difference from last night grew and gave Law and Justice 4 more mandates. It will equal to 27 seats in the European Parliament currently, a huge increase from 19 seats in 2014. So how has Law and Justice succeeded in this election, which wasn't its strong side previously?
Well, that's the most remarkable thing about this result. If you look at the actual votes that Law and Justice managed to garner, first of all, we had a massive increase in turnout in comparison with other EU elections in the past. We had a 45% of the electorate. That's close on what you get in a national election, which is remarkable. So there was a great mobilization of the vote. Law and Justice got over 6.1 million votes. That's a huge increase in their electoral base. It's actually 400,000 more votes than they got in the parliamentary elections of 2015, which gave them an overall majority in the parliament on a lower turnout. So that just shows the scale of mobilization that we've seen. And of course, that we'll be discussing for a long time where this mobilization came from. But undoubtedly it's led, I think, to a fundamental reshift in the balance of Polish politics, certainly in terms of the parliamentary elections coming up in the autumn.
And the victory for Law and Justice is, of course, a huge loss for the European coalition. So that is the civic platform of Grzegorz Schetyna, which has gathered a number of parties, the agrarian PSL, the leftist SLD, and some other groupings. And the big question is, will that coalition survive until the parliamentary race in the autumn?
Well, you're right. This was an election that they weren't supposed to have lost. This was a European election, and it was a campaign run on European values from the point of view of the European coalition. And yet they still managed to lose, having united, as you say, the bulk of the opposition to Law and Justice under one banner. So this will raise very serious questions about the assumptions behind the campaign, the issues that they decided to promote, and above all, questions over the leadership of Grzegorz Schetyna himself, both of the European coalition and of the Civic Platform Party. And I think already this morning we've seen the agrarian peasant party, the PSL party, saying that it's very doubtful that they will run again with the coalition in the autumn. So the centrifugal forces that this Law and Justice victory has unleashed are beginning to affect the European coalition already.
And apart from the European coalition and Law and Justice, we have some smaller parties. The third one that got in is Robert Biedroń's Spring Party, a newcomer, and 3 more parties under the electoral threshold. Is it true that there is a duopoly in Poland right now, that no other parties can get in?
It certainly looks like it. I think this election has, Polish politics has always been polarised. But as you know, there have been these smaller parties on the fringes able to get over the threshold. Effectively, that's no longer the case. You have one small left liberal party, the Spring Party, that just squeaked through the threshold. And what's interesting is that the 2 parties that didn't make it, the Cookies Party and the Confederation, all of those are good news for Jarosław Kaczyński and Law and Justice, because it does mean that Law and Justice is now the absolute hegemonic political player to the right of the political spectrum. And this will be a big blow to both Cookies and the Confederation. It's doubtful whether they'll make the threshold in the parliamentary election. So it really is a total polarization of politics. And right now it is Law and Justice, which is the united, single, clear message party under one leader. And yes, you do have a strong opposition, but it's divided, it's fragmented, its leadership is under question, and its messaging is both confused and, as the elections yesterday showed, ineffective. So really this does seem game set, not entirely match to Jarosław Kaczyński, but he's almost there.
And with that cementation, the first such strengthening of law and justice in the European Parliament, how will the position of Poland change in the EU itself?
Well, I think we still have to see the exact balance of MEPs in the European Parliament. We have a very strong showing by anti-systemic Eurosceptic parties in Italy, in the UK, in Hungary, of course. And I think this puts law and justice in a very strong position in the weeks and months ahead, as there will be new alliances forming in the European Parliament. As you know, there's been, with the imminent departure of the Conservatives from the ECR grouping, there'll be questions as to where law and justice will end up. But it really makes law and justice in the position to be one of the potential kingmakers in the European Parliament as to the makeup of the new Eurosceptic faction within the Parliament.
So no surprises, as you're saying, until the next parliamentary election in October or November, but maybe the return of some politicians as Donald Tusk or some new movements?
Well, I think the dynamic for the parliamentary elections is definitely now with law and justice. They'll be emboldened, actually, to maintain this political strategy of their narrative that brought them this victory. And I think it will discourage, potentially. It's very difficult to see within the civic platform if Grzegorz Schetyna's leadership is questioned, who's there to potentially take over? That's one problem. And I think, given that it makes the victory of the civic platform less likely in the autumn, I think it also discourages, personally, Donald Tusk re-engaging heavily. And also, I think, frankly, it will make him think twice whether he does want to run or risk running in 2020, because right now, on the back of these results, and certainly in terms of some of the opinion polls, Andrzej Duda, the current president, would be in a very strong position to win in the spring of 2020. So it really does look not very encouraging for the civic platform and their allies, both within Poland and outside Poland.
Marek, thank you very much for this analysis. This is a very quick analysis. It's Monday morning, 10 a.m. after the election day. So we will be updating on what happens on our website and our Twitter account. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stasha.